Hello ladies and gentlemen, I hope I'm going live about now. We are continuing with the PlayStation conversations after today's discussion of the PlayStation 5 sort of slim. Now we are discussing the continuing improvements and added features to PS Plus and specifically PS Plus Premium. Later on I'm all open for other diversions, potentially reacting to MKBHD's review of the Pixel 8 Pro, and I want to keep covering the Pixel 8 Pro in the days to come, so maybe we'll keep that for tomorrow, depending on how long the stream pans out. My cat apparently is feeling lonely, but for now I hope she tolerates it. That I'm not paying too much attention to her. As always, please let me know if the audio is alright, if the stream is doing well in general. We've had some technical hiccups in the last couple of weeks, so I'm always a little paranoid. Josephat, long time no see, man. Hello, welcome. Really appreciate you joining. It's always interesting to see who joins, like for the Apple topics, and who joins for the PlayStation topics. I know that my streams are very, very irregular, so I appreciate anyone who can join. Now, the topic of discussion today is PlayStation Plus, and specifically PlayStation Plus Premium, and more specifically the addition of PS5 cloud streaming to PlayStation Plus Premium. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, PlayStation Plus consists of 3 tiers: Essential, Extra, and Premium. Essential is where you get your monthly games, your 3 monthly games usual, and then you have to redeem them, and then they are forever in your library for as long as you have PS Plus. PS Plus Extra is a whole library of PS4 and PS5 titles that is somewhat on a rotating basis. Usually PlayStation's own games stay on there. Some games from third-party studios come in and out depending on the licensing agreements with Sony. And PlayStation Plus Premium adds cloud streaming for games. It adds classics, whether it comes to PS2 or PSP emulation, or even PS3 back catalogs, through game streaming from PS3 servers. And now we also have, of course, game trials where you can try games up from a certain price point at least 3 months after launch, or well, at the very most 3 months after launch. This is when usually game studios have to make a game trial available, and then they either give you like an hour or 2 hours, some give even longer, and then you get to trial out those games. I like PS Plus Premium. I know it has recently gotten a lot more expensive by like a third, so a lot of people have started wondering whether or not it's even worth considering that. But for now, we are where we are, right? This is the prices we have to deal with, and Sony has been surprisingly aggressively adding more functionality to PS Plus. Now, before we get into the actual new stuff, I just want to give you a small public service announcement, basically, and discuss with you the PlayStation Plus game catalog for October. Now, the main titles here are Gotham Knights, a title that has not been received very well and runs at 30 FPS, even though there should be some room to make it run at least 40, but nevertheless, at least its most major bugs seem to have been fixed over the last couple of patches. Then Disco Elysium, the final cut, definitely a recommendation for this one. The Dark Pictures anthology, House of Ashes, I haven't played it, so but I know that the Dark Pictures games are known to be rather decent. This, of course, is not the entire list. There's also Alien Isolation. Really recommend a nicely atmospheric horror game. Dead Island Definitive Edition. I know people consider Dead Island really a classic, the original. Outlast 2, don't know anything about that. Elite Dangerous, I've heard some good stuff about that. far changing tides. I've heard about the game, but not actually much. And then Gungrave Gore, pretty much the same one as with the last game. And Elder Souls, no idea, never heard about this game ever. The same goes for Rocky. And we also have PlayStation Plus Premium games, so this was all that is being added into PlayStation Plus Extra. Now, when it comes to PlayStation Plus Premium Classics, we are getting Tekken 6. It's a Soul Calibur Broken Destiny, another Ape Escape game, this time Ape Escape Academy, IQ Final. And I really am not a classics gamer, so if somebody wants to let me know if those are good games. I know Tekken 6 is obviously sort of a classic, but yeah, with all the other stuff, I'm definitely no expert here. But let's get into what is actually new here. Now, this is not technically super new, but I want to cover this first. This happened like last week, on October 5th to be more precise. Sony added a new feature, or basically a new service that you now can access on PS5 and PS4. It was previously known as Bravia Core and was available on their TVs, but now it's known as Sony Pictures Core. It has obviously all the functionality that you would expect from like a movie and TV service, right? Sort of like your iTunes. You can buy stuff, you can rent stuff, but because it's a Sony service and because Sony wants to have more synergy between their services, then because they have a large library that they can access. Everything from Sony Pictures, obviously. Sony now owns Crunchyroll, so Sony definitely has a lot of power to wield in what they can add here. Now, there are exclusive benefits here that come in the form of early access to select Sony Pictures films that will, for example, apply to the new Gran Turismo movie, but there's also something else. And that comes down to if you're a PlayStation Plus Premium or Deluxe member. Now, PlayStation Plus and Premium and Deluxe are mostly identical for anybody who doesn't know. Deluxe is the name for PS Plus Premium in regions where cloud streaming is not available, right? You have to have your server infrastructure, you have to make sure that latency is well managed. So some regions that might be too far off from a server might not be compatible with certain licensing agreements that Sony makes for their cloud streaming. They get PlayStation Plus Deluxe. It's usually a few dollars cheaper than PS Plus Premium and offers everything PS Plus Premium does except for PS3 based game streaming. We'll see how it performs obviously once we get PS5 especially. So what do you get with PS Plus Premium or Deluxe? Well, you get access to a curated catalog of up to 100 movies. So it's sort of like having a mini Netflix included if you're the highest tier PS Plus subscriber. This catalog will be ad-free and updated periodically. Obviously, for Sony, the cost associated with it is pretty low because it's their own movies and TV shows. And you'll get some stuff like Looper, okay, Kingsglaive, Final Fantasy 15, okay, Elysium, Resident Evil Damnation, not necessarily bombastic titles by any means, but I've looked through the catalog. There was a little bit of interesting stuff like The Equalizer. Not that those are amazing movies, right? And Sony Pictures Core is available in 23 markets globally. You can go to the website that I'm basically checking out right now, and you can find whether your region is covered. And if you have a PS5, I know that because I've done it myself, you can go to the media section, right? You have left your games and right your media. You can even change that directly on the controller, right, with the triggers. And then you have then you can download the Sony Pictures Core app basically, or service, the same way you would download something like YouTube or Crunchyroll onto your PS5. Now, the reaction to this was mostly negative, I would say. And I don't think, when I say this, I don't mean your regular consumers, right? Because I don't actually think that most regular consumers have a lot against stuff being added. But the wider internet discussion between gamers was, dude, I am paying for a game service. You just made that game service much more expensive, right? So why am I getting movies for that extra money, right? I want games. That's what I'm paying for. So people were a little bit pissed. I don't think this is a valid concern. I think Sony would have increased prices regardless of the inclusion of Sony Pictures Core, but at least I can sort of understand the logical thinking behind it. Now, I don't yet know how the internet is reacting to the new PlayStation Plus Premium feature, but it's definitely more interesting. Now, after having PS3 cloud gaming, which we need for backwards compatibility, and after having PS4 cloud streaming, which never worked too well because most PS4 games are 30 FPS, at least the demanding ones, and given the latency that you get through cloud gaming in general, then you get the latency on top of that is just a 30 FPS game. That never was a great experience. You can let me know in the chat if you've tried it. So it definitely was never that great for me. Now, the other feature, of course, that you can have is you can stream your PS5 games, well, directly from your PS5 to, let's say, your mobile phone. In fact, this is what the PS Plus portal is built upon. And unfortunately, it seems like, and I have no idea why Sony is doing this, how, why, what, when, but for some reason, PS5 cloud streaming is apparently not right away coming to the PS Portal. Their handheld thing for remote PS5 gaming, right? For remote play that you get when you stream directly from your own PS5 to it. But for some reason, it cannot connect to this cloud service. Okay, let's just focus back a little and see what it is. Well, its streaming access includes support includes support for PS5 titles, for supported PS5 titles, we should state, on the game catalog, and game trials and purchases. This is the most interesting stuff, and I think the one thing that truly has the potential to differentiate it from the likes of xCloud, at least in the short term. Of course, we'll need to see quality tests and other stuff like that. So let me read this out because I don't want to miss anything for you, right? Since launching the all-new PlayStation Plus more than a year ago, we've seen such high engagement from our fans. This is true, by the way. I believe more people overall subscribe to PS Plus than PS Plus Extra. I don't know how much that is changing, given the fact that obviously everything has gotten so much more expensive, but from Sony's quarterly reports, it seemed like they were bringing in a decent amount of money with their redesign of PS Plus. From quality titles offered in game catalog like Horizon Forbidden West and Sea of Stars to new trophy features we've added to classic games like Legend of Dragoon and Siphon Filter. I should mention this, Sony has actually been pretty aggressive in ironing out the major complaints that people have had with their services. It's way better than PlayStation Now was, because you now have a game catalog in PS Plus Extra that includes both PS4 and PS5 games. You also now have a pretty decent collection of somewhat modern Sony PlayStation Studios games, right? Sony has pursued more aggressively day one releases. In fact, Sea of Stars was quite famous for having launched both onto PlayStation Plus and onto Xbox Game Pass simultaneously, because both companies wanted to have that game day one on their services. But also, when Sony launched their classics, they've been widely criticized. For one, many games, outside the US, you got at first as PAL versions. PAL versions are 50 FPS, not 60. Now, that wouldn't be such a problem if most modern TVs hadn't been completely subsumed by the 60 FPS NTSC standard. And then it gets even worse when you're having a game that actually runs at 25 FPS, and then you have to put it into a 60 FPS container. So those games looked like a mess. Sony has quietly addressed that and has offered NTSC version for many of those titles. It's not a universal fix yet. Some games still are PAL only in some regions outside of the US, but it's better. A much known feature for PlayStation users are trophies, and trophies have not been immediately available for many games on that are coming to PS Plus Classics. I apologize, it's so many PS Plus, and right, it's PS Plus Premium, their Classics catalog, right? It's basically PS2 and PSP emulated games for now a lot. Sorry, PS1 and PSP games. I think I said PS2 originally. And so what's interesting here is they've added that feature that a lot of people know, of course, from modern games, not even that modern at this point, and they've started added trophies to those emulated titles. So a lot has been really improving, and now finally we're getting PlayStation Plus Premium that now includes PS3, PS4, and PS5 game streaming. So starting this month, we'll begin launching cloud streaming access for supported PS5 digital titles within the PS Plus game catalog and game trials, as well as supported titles in the PS5 game library that PlayStation Plus members own. So I don't obviously yet know about the entire list. I think this will be like pretty developing news in the long run. But they are giving us some details here. Guys, I just want to say, anybody who is here, I really appreciate you. As you can maybe see from the subscriber count, we have grown tremendously on this channel. If you are somebody yet new to this channel, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. All the YouTube jazz, as I call it. If you want to support me directly, you will find the link to my Patreon account in the description, or you can support me directly here through something like a super chat or a super sticker. So, select PS5 games will be available for streaming, and we are planning to have hundreds of PS5 titles to support this new benefit. This includes top PS5 hits from the PS Plus game catalog, that includes Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima, Mortal Kombat 11, and Saints Row 4. Now, I don't know if there's any limitation on like games that are in the game catalog, if maybe not all will be streamable, but for now it seems like there are some restrictions. Maybe Sony's like really stingy right now with the cloud allocation they want to give this service. Obviously they also try to sell as many PS5s as possible, so they might not want to put that much like of their chip purchases into the cloud, so that will be interesting. Game trials for PS5 games such as Hogwarts Legacy, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and the Callisto Protocol. Now I fully expect this probably has to like be managed to a degree by them, so I wouldn't expect all game trials to be instantly available for that. And additional PS5 digital titles PS Plus premium members already own. So if you are like a mostly disc gamer, this is one instance where you're actually losing out. If you're like me and buy most of your games digitally, and you're paying for a pretty expensive cloud service, subscription service, well then congratulations, now you're getting more benefits here. And some of those included are RE4, Dead Island 2, Genshin Impact, Fall Guys, and Fortnite. So a very interesting collection. I think they really wanted to just mention something new, like RE4, Dead Island 2, right? Obviously RE4 is also the remake of a classic. Genshin Impact obviously is a huge game, as is Fortnite, as is Fall Guys. There are just a few examples of supported PS5 games that will include a cloud streaming option in addition to download. Now this is aimed for now only at the PS5, right? So this is basically if you want to play a game and you don't want to download it fully, maybe like one of those game trial games, right? You really don't want to allocate potentially 40-50 gigabytes for one of those games on your SSD. Well, the way you address it is you now stream it. So I don't really know why somebody would buy a game digitally and then stream it, but it is what it is, right? Let's continue. PS Cloud streaming is exclusively available on the PS5 console. Now this is interesting because this goes against Microsoft's approach, and I think it's a pretty consumer-friendly approach, admittedly, on Xbox, right? You can play you can play Xbox Series S and X games on Xbox One through game streaming. So at least that's something where Xbox definitely wins in that regard. However, I think that Sony is like really starting to like let the PS4 go, right? Like they put Sony Pictures Core on it. Obviously, it's a pretty non-demanding game and stuff like that. It's Apple, so I don't think they've had any problems with that. And when it comes to all other services, I think they kind of want to say people like, look, if you want actually our best games, our best services, get a freaking PS5, subscribe to one of our PlayStation Plus tiers, preferably PS Plus Premium, buy our games day one at full price, and then you have the best experience. So it's definitely, to a degree, a money move here. It also has to do with them definitely not wanting too many people to get access to the service right away, because I cannot imagine that they have a lot of space, basically a lot of resources dedicated to it yet. So you can play those games without downloading, and you'll also see features available with the new PS5 streaming benefit. Downloadable content and in-game purchases will be available for PS5 game streaming, including DLC and add-ons similar to purchases from downloadable games. There will be high-quality resolution options. We can actually see that here: 720p, 1080p, 1440p, or even full 4K. They will also offer 60 FPS and even a choice between SDR and HDR. So that's definitely nice of them, I would say, but it's comprehensive. It's important to note Sony sometimes really does not get everything right out of the gate. So this is very much appreciated. Also, of course, I was saying Sony holds back stuff from PS4. There are obviously other reasons, right? Like support, for example, for the DualSense. Obviously, I kind of imagine that you would need a DualSense for the PS5 games. Now, I don't know how that will evolve in the future, right? I know that some games obviously have a ton of great DualSense integration, so that would at least be an excuse for why it's not coming to PS4. But yeah, it's interesting in that regard, I would say. They also feature enhanced audio with support for all PS5 audio capabilities like Dolby 5.1, 7.1 and Tempest 3D audio technology, and you can also do screenshot capture and record of up to 3 minutes of video. By the way, I'm sorry guys, I don't know why I'm lisping. I'm not nervous or anything, it's just my tongue today. It's really dry. I'm trying to drink on top of it, but it just doesn't work. Now, it's the rollout is actually really interesting to me. They're starting with Japan, targeting October 17th, so that's next week. Then October 23rd, so that's a week after that. And then North America coming a week later. Now, it's interesting that they're favoring Japan for once, but it's definitely nice to see, even for me in Europe, that we are not last by any means. Obviously, that still leaves like South America, America and vast portions of Asia uncovered in terms of that service. But yeah, it seems to be still quite a wide rollout, so definitely nice to see. It's currently available. I think they're covering this basically to say that if you have PS Plus Premium, you're very likely to get the PS5 game streaming, right? I think the reason why they cover where PS Plus Premium is available is because some people have PS Plus Deluxe, which, as I said, is basically PS Plus Premium, but without the game streaming. So you can find your country here. I'm not reading out every single one out of here. Guys, please let me know, those of you who are watching, do you want me to react to MKBHD's Pixel 8 Pro review afterwards? I think we have the time. I think I have the energy. I think this will be an interesting thing for all of us. So Sony is asking us to hopefully enjoy this. To me, how should I state this? I am all for companies trying out new stuff. I know some people really want to like hammer home and like, oh, you're a gaming company, you're a console company, why are you doing this but not this? Why are you charging us so much? To be honest, the answer is pretty simple. Sony is a for-profit company. Sony wants to expand beyond just your regular like AAA games that you buy and maybe play once and then never engage with again. They want to have continued revenue. They want to have continued engagement from users. They want to have options where even when sometimes they don't put out anything, right? They want people to still be engaged through content that they can put from third-party providers, right? That includes maybe big games like Final Fantasy 16, but it also includes everything that they can put on PS Plus, PS Plus Extra, PS Plus Premium, and of course all the additional features that they can incorporate. Now, personally, do I think this warrants the like 1/3 to almost 40% price increase that we have seen for the PS Plus annual pricing? To be quite honest, I don't think yet. I think there's a lot of weirdness going on. Now, I personally am staying subscribed. I do like to have the full experience. And I'm currently still like subscribed for 2 years at the original pricing. So I'm definitely not losing out here. But when you look here, right, it's movies, and those are not the best movies. And it's cloud gaming, but it's cloud gaming only for the console itself, where you can play those games anyway, right? So I would say those are nice to haves, and I especially like that they're adding stuff to PS Plus Premium, which definitely wasn't like their like highest reviewed service. A lot of people recommended you get PS Plus Extra instead. Especially because when we go to like the game catalog, like I've heard time and time again that like the classic selection that they offer is like pretty meager for what they could be doing. So it's interesting. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like by any means bad, and I do like that they're trying to compensate a little bit for the somewhat high price increase, but overall it's not much more than the first step, or to be more precise, like the first 2 steps, right? Sony Pictures Core, PS5 cloud streaming. I think both the regular PS Plus, like extra, like essential and extra, are fine. While they have both gotten more expensive, I think people still want to get essential for their for just the multiplayer games, right? And they want to get extra for the somewhat more extensive game catalog these days. It's actually a pretty decent deal even with the price increase. And I think PlayStation Plus Premium is still sort of finding its identity. It's still not quite the classics catalog that many people might want. And it's finally expanding with more comprehensive cloud streaming, but it's amazing that, for example, Sony's latest sort of cloud gaming focused device, the PlayStation Portal, does not support this edition, right? It's amazing to me. It's incredibly dumb to me. Like, let me just see the Portal. No, not Portal 2. Where's PlayStation Portal? Okay, this is also something they need to improve. The search section. Go to just a PS blog. Where is it? I think I saw that in like the German store, in the German blog, not too long ago. September 26th. More bundles, more games. The fuck is this? Why can I not find PlayStation Plus Portal? Like, I know that I'm right, and I mean, they specifically are pointing out that the PlayStation Portal is like not... Have I scrolled through this? There it is. There it is. So this is the PlayStation Portal. It's $200, right? It's focused on PlayStation 5 Remote Play, or PlayStation Remote Play in general, right? It has an 8-inch LCD panel. It has what is essentially a DualSense, like cut in half and then positioned left and right of a small tablet. It has specific hardware inside to connect to their latest audio peripherals through something called PlayStation Linked, which is much lower latency than like your than your standard Bluetooth connection. So it's a decent device, right? It has USB-C port. They aren't quite giving us any details on like battery life. This is how it looks for the most part. And it does not support cloud gaming from the PS5. It supports only PlayStation 5, like streaming basically from your own PS5. And I have really no idea how this kind of limitation ever can happen. Like, without 20 people in the room screaming, no, this is dumb. We just created an accessory specifically for this. And I think, like, also, of course, this service, right? I've now clicked it away. Like, the service needs to now also, of course, come to mobile phones, of course. Their order in which they structure like their blog is also weird. Josephat, you're saying so disappointing. Well, even if you're not buying the PlayStation Portal, right? I'm not buying a PlayStation Portal, but you know what I have? I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I'm thinking of buying like that controller accessory. But you're saying the PlayStation Portal has been sent out to die. I don't know, man. It's so weird in that regard. Like, I hope they add this feature afterwards. I don't know, like, if there are any firmware limitations. Maybe they put like just a gigabyte of storage in it, and it's just enough storage to handle like the one app that handles like direct access to your own PS5. That would be hilariously bad, but like, it could be the case. I have no idea why it would be, like, realistically. But yeah, this is the one major downfall for this service, and currently it's only for PS5. It's not, I understand why it's not for PS4, right? Sony wants PS4 users to buy a PS5. That's fine to me. But why is there no plan to come out to you're saying it's like the Wii U, basically. Yeah, I mean, it's less functional than a Wii U gamepad, right? At least that one had like cool ideas. And thankfully, this is just an accessory. It's not a whole console concept. But it's such a weird thing. Guys, I've asked you that before. We have now more people watching. Please let me know. Do you want me to react to MKBHD's review of the Pixel 8 Pro? I've been really waiting for this. It just came out. I'll obviously give you timestamps on the website on the video. I know it might take away a little bit from like the focused nature of the video, but hey, it's a nice live stream. I have the energy, I have the time. Please let me know. So yeah, nice additions, still baby steps almost in some ways. To me, PlayStation Plus Premium already was enough. I'm actually quite a big fan of the game trials overall. I've tried like dozens of games at this point. I think what Sony almost needs to do is to have something extra, quote unquote, in PS Plus Premium. My suggestion might be something like adding PSVR 2 games to the library, right? If you have PlayStation Plus Premium, maybe they add one game per month, right? And maybe it's like on a rotating basis or something like that. Like, I'm a PSVR 2 gamer. I play games like Beat Saber, C-Smash VRS, Pistol Whip, the Moss games, the Horizon game that came out, right? Call of the Mountain, I believe. It wasn't that memorable, unfortunately, but yeah, there needs to be something more here yet. But I'm at least glad that they're on a path to thinking what they could add. I'm glad that there is some basically like cost to Sony, that they're not just getting to keep all the extra money that they're collecting from the increased prices, but that they're also actually having to invest some money of their own. So that's basically it with PlayStation Plus. We are now a little over half an hour in. I would like to remind everyone who is new here, we have like a couple of rotating viewers. Like, if you are watching this and haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing. If you want to support me directly, you can find the Patreon link in the description of this channel, or you can support me directly in the live chat with something like a super chat or a super sticker. Let me just briefly go back to OBS. It looks like everything is still working well. It looks like we just switched ingest servers though. So macro screen capture. Okay. You will have to let me know if the audio is working well for you, because I do want to react to MKBHD's video. I apologize if there's more background noise in my apartment today. Again, as I've told you guys before, I'm staying still this month with my mom. And with that, there will also be, of course, a little bit more volume associated. And with my cat as well. So we're just gonna find MKBHD here.
So a common phrase in
we're gonna find a decent quality level, and I'll just have to see how much room I take up on YouTube basically. So I have to, I think, make myself a little smaller here in the corner. I think we can all work with that. You can still probably hear me well. And now you have to tell me how the audio is doing with MKBHD, because OBS is sometimes really weird when it comes to YouTube audio.
So a common phrase in the video world is, we'll fix it in post. Meaning the shot isn't quite perfect, but we'll just fix that stuff in post-production. Kind of like this.
Okay, I've now had a little bit of video. Let me just briefly check on the audio. Okay, as always, I have like my own stream running in the background to make sure that it's working well. Oh, we now have 6,800 subscribers, so we seem to have added like at least 10 people while I was streaming. That's very, very nice to see. Thank you guys so much. All seems to be working rather well. So without further ado, I'll get started with MKBHD's video, and this is where my timestamp will be.
So a common phrase in the video world is, we'll fix it in post. Meaning the shot isn't quite perfect, but we'll just fix that stuff in post-production. kind of like this. There you go. Or how about a little bit of this too? There we go. Much better. See, it's not that it's a lazy way of doing it, but I feel like a good filmmaker tries to get as reliably good in camera as possible instead of relying on software. And the we'll fix it in post version of a smartphone is definitely the Google Pixel. So many of the Pixel's best features are literally fixing it in post, right? Oh, is your face blurry in that picture you took? Fine, face unblur, fix it in post. Oh, what's that? You didn't quite get that angle right on your photo? Magic Editor, fix it in post. Oh, was there a weird background audio in that video you took? Easy, we got Audio Eraser, fix it in post. And many of these strategies, with a little help from AI, actually work, and that's where the Pixel shines. But there's also some things about smartphones that you kind of just can't really fix in post. First things first, the design on the outside of these phones looks, I would say, familiar.
Yeah, I will just add my 2 cents to it while I watch. I think the design overall is nice. I don't agree with any of the people who are wetting their panties with the idea of like, oh my god, a soft rounded design, that means it's the best forever. No, like, I don't like the shiny stainless steel like around the cameras. Here it looks way better here. Wait, is one matte and one glossy? That's a weird distinction to make. I mean, that's one that Apple used to make. Thankfully they were smart enough to know that matte is better. Of course, like, you have the 3 cameras here versus the 2, so that makes the smaller one look a little cleaner as well. You also have like the completely unnecessary temperature sensor on the Pro here. I'll be interested to see in where MKBHD believes that some features like don't really like can be obviously improved in post. I'm kind of inclined to believe you probably will mean something like battery life. I've heard some rumbles about how the Pixel 8 Pro might perform, and I do want to cover something like the tensor chips in more detail once we have like really comprehensive benchmarks.
It's like the past few years of Pixel, which I actually really like, but I also do think this one's a little bit better in a few ways. First of all, the camera circles did the iPhone Dynamic Island thing of combining themselves into one big circle, which I actually like.
Yes,
with these new bigger sensors here. And then also the Pro Pixels now have a completely flat display, so finally moving away from the slightly curved edges from the past years, and a satin back in every color, which does a shockingly good job at hiding fingerprints if you're team no case like I am. Aside from that, though, everything else is right where you'd expect it. The one thing I want to see if maybe they can fix now is the dust that always accumulates like right under and above the camera bar. Probably the only way to get rid of that is to
the same applies to the iPhone camera, like elevation, so I'm not holding it against Google by any means.
Curve it like they did on the Oppo Find X4 and X3, but I don't know if they'll ever do that. But the biggest improvement to the hardware, though, is definitely up front. Honestly, to the point where I feel like these new screens sort of tie the phone together in a way that they are up at the level of any other flagship phone. So the smaller Pixel 8 now has a 6.2-inch 1080p OLED display, slightly smaller than last year, and that display is surrounded now by perfectly thin, even bezels all the way around. No more tiny chin like previous years. And it's now bumped up to a 120Hz display. That gets up to a new maximum 2000 nits of brightness, which is incredible. It's super bright. They're naming it the...
Now, part of why I really want to cover these phones with like actual like raw data is because sometimes like certain ratings for like specifications, like sometimes they will give out like volume measurements for certain devices, like how loud something gets, obviously how bright a screen gets. Sometimes those numbers honestly don't really reflect reality. I think one number that is pretty well known is and people often bring up it's like people will say that the iPhone goes up to 2000 nits while the Galaxy S23 Ultra goes up to 1750 nits. That is not true. Actual outdoor brightness on the Galaxy S23 Ultra is not like for the full screen, is never 1750 nits. That's their HDR brightness or whatever other brightness measure they might have. But no, like there are websites like GSM Arena who do really good, comprehensive, like brightness testing, and there's nothing yet close in the industry to how bright the iPhone gets on a wide portion of the screen. Outdoors, like you can put for other phones in like manual mode and auto mode and slide up the brightness to full and put them under maximum brightness source. They will never produce quite the brightness of the iPhone. Now, in this case, Google specifically said that this isn't HDR brightness for them, that this is a usability brightness for real, and they've actually advertised a higher peak brightness than the iPhone at 2400 nits, at least on the Pro. It's rated for up to 2000 on the regular Pixel 8. So this is why I'm really, really interested in covering these phones, because there's some big claims being made here that I'm not fully sure how well they will pan out. I think some of Google's there's a reason, for example, why Google has not been very aggressive when it comes to their promises about their Tensor G3 processor, and it's because it seems to be rather underwhelming in many ways. So I'm really interested to see how their other concrete promises pan out.
Actua display, because they feel the need to name everything, but
everybody does
all the time. Auto brightness has also been behaving this time around, which is great. It's not LTPO though, so you'll still probably want to turn off.
Not on the Pixel 8, but on the Pro it is.
But then the Pixel 8 Pro has a new 6.7-inch display. It is LTPO. It's closer.
Like, by the way, small question about the resolution here, which is, I know the iPhone is like not perfect 1440p. I know Huawei phones, for example, have not been perfect 1440p. But since when do devices like the Pixel have like this completely non-standard like resolution of 1344 by 2992? Like, it's not that this resolution is like game breaking in any way, right? Or like system breaking, but in my opinion, it's like, why not make it fully 1440p at that point? Like, you have so many you have so much content out there that is optimized for like 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. That's the one advantage that you could really have over an iPhone. Even if you end up with similar pixel density, at least you would have the advantage of, well, if you have 1440p, then you're actually beating out the iPhone most likely. But why not use that for your advantage? That I never quite got that when Androids make like 1440p or not exactly 1080p screens. I've criticized Apple for that as well when they put out like 830p screens with like their 6.1-inch iPhone XR and iPhone 11. I understand why they did it, right? It simply had to do with them taking 326 ppi from their smaller screens and just scaling it up. But like, come on, it's like not that big of a deal to just source a 1080p panel. And you can see that with something like the iPhone mini that then had a 1080p screen, even though it didn't really have a pixel density that was 1-to-1 to any other iPhone. So it definitely was possible for Apple to just take an arbitrary, somewhat standard resolution and make it the resolution of their phone of choice. I always get a little confused when we get like non-standard resolutions on Android devices.
The 1440p, and it maxes out at 2400 nits max brightness. This one is legitimately up there with the brightest displays I've ever seen on a smartphone in person. And I definitely did not expect that to come from a Pixel.
Yeah, especially
naming this the Super
yeah, I think part of why people don't expect that from the Pixel has to do with the fact that Pixels are not really known for like their great thermal management, and even this device, it has like a thicker graphite layer and a little bit more copper on it, but it does not have a vapor chamber heatsink. It does not have an extensive heat pipe system throughout the device. It has basically nothing that like the S23 Ultra does, or like the latest Xiaomi 13 Ultra has. And they have a processor inside that is based now on a node that is at least like a gen behind 3 nanometer, but also like half a node behind 4 nanometer, like TSMC's 4 nanometer, that is, because they are not even using the Samsung's latest node. Samsung's latest node would be LPP plus, low power plus, basically. This is LPP. So again, I let's see where Marquez will find potential issues here that are not fixable in post.
Display. So the result is a hardware package on the outside of the phone that honestly feels like you can put it right up alongside any flagships from Xiaomi,
overall,
Samsung,
yeah,
or anyone else.
not inside though.
Just from the way it's built, the way it feels, the metal rails, the satin back, the clickiness of the buttons, the super bright display, the even bezels, everything about it. This is a rare W for Pixel.
A rare W.
Two of the small things about this display, though. One, it's still just a single front-facing camera at the top, but Google has found a way with software to get more information out of this camera in order to be able to use it for secure unlock for things like banking apps and logging into things. So basically, instead of
yeah, I wouldn't use that. I know, like, but like, there is the reason why we use really dedicated biometrics for functionality. I know there's a lot that can be done with AI these days, but just use your fingerprint scanner or use Face ID on your iPhone. Don't make up bullshit.
Adding more hardware up front, like an infrared camera
or a dot projector
or radar, if you remember that.
Yeah, we used to have radar.
Software magic, and it's convenient. But then number two, the fingerprint reader has not improved. So remember we were talking about
again, this is where I come down hard on Google sometimes. Look, iPhones are known to maintain certain issues over a long period of time because, well, you could say that Apple knows their audience and they know how to like really prolong, like get the most out of something without like pissing off their users so much that they will switch. I would say one part of that for historically has been battery life, all the way leading up to something like the iPhone 11 Pro, right? Or even at least the iPhone XR, right? Where you could say like, oh, then maybe Apple improved battery life really well with something like the Plus iPhones, but then every like sort of flagship iPhone, right? You have to understand, the iPhone 6, 6S, and 7 and 8 are still, or at least until the 7, are still flagships. They deserved better battery life, but Apple was like, people who really want that just will get the larger phone anyway. And before that, obviously this was a completely different discussion, but this was also the era where at least Apple maintained the idea that like, oh, we make small phones, right? Not gigantic ones. But then they started offering big phones, but then their middle child, right, somehow became neglected. So then Apple was like, okay, we'll finally add that, right? And then like storage, right? Apple was like for years, oh, 16 gigabytes is enough. Oh, 16 gigabytes is enough. Okay, with the iPhone 7, we're giving you 32. But actually the demand was so high for most people at that point that they had to increase that right the year after, right? Even on the 8 and 8 Plus, not just on the iPhone 10, they had to move up from 32 to 64 gigabytes of base storage. That came with a small price increase, unfortunately, but they still had to relent a little bit. So Apple knows sometimes how to milk a little bit more money by putting a little bit less money into their devices. But Pixel is like so weird in this, like, oh, we improve your front-facing camera. You can use it basically as if it had Face ID. And people are like, oh, cool. So are all biometrics like really good now? No, our fingerprint sensor is still like 2 years old at this point. It's way worse than anything from Samsung or something. And you're like, what? Why?
2 years of Pixels, all the best, the highest end flagships feels like they all have that super fast ultrasonic fingerprint reader. This one is still optical and still just a beat slower than the high-end ones. It's not horrible, but you can tell it's not as fast or as consistently accurate with like rain on your phone as something like a Samsung phone. It's also not any bigger.
It's really small.
Pixel, we might as well just get right into talking about the camera, because this is where you're gonna see the fix it in post pushed to its absolute maximum, more than any other phone. So the new camera sensors across the board, they do plenty of heavy lifting, of course. It's a big 50 megapixel primary sensor shared across both the 8 and the 8 Pro, f1.7, OIS, and pixel photos, they look good. They're sharp, there's tons of dynamic range as expected, autofocus is really fast, and it can get a pretty shallow depth of field with close-up subjects, which is nice. But really, most of what you're looking at when you look at a pixel photo or video is software.
Yeah.
So the multiple exposures blended together into a single HDR shot, the strategic relighting of recognized faces.
Okay, that's a weird shot.
There's a little extra noise reduction this year, so sometimes details get kind of watercolory, but at least there's enough resolution that it doesn't look terrible when zoomed
Yeah,
in.
I'll say this year the iPhone has like one advantage that really will get lost in YouTube. By the way, I know some people really want to like hammer home like, oh, maybe the Pixel will get like the camera crowd or the camera crown or something. I don't give a fuck about that. I want Apple to have strong competition. For example, like I saw some people saying like, oh, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 will be better in GPU test, and I'm like, I hope it will. Like, come on, it's launching like 4 months later, realistically, and it's atrocious in terms of CPU performance if you really just want to go benchmark by benchmark, right? Why shouldn't it win in at least one thing while consuming a little bit more power? Like, why not? So, yeah, again, it is what it is.
Also found there is definitely a tendency to over HDR some images sometimes. And
Yeah.
when it comes to features, well, oh my god, there are so many now. You probably already know about Magic Eraser. Like, oh, what's that? You've taken a photo and someone's in the background, you want to get rid of them. Boom. Magic
Eraser, for all the Apple users who are watching me, is available in the Google Photos app. It is not as good as I hoped it would be. I've subscribed to like Google One a week ago, and it does not quite do what I would like it to do. Maybe it's because I really know that they've like done the image correction, so I'm actually like looking for imperfections. I guess if I were to look at an image and not know that it was edited, I probably wouldn't find it. So it's not a bad feature by any means. I don't know if it runs any better if you're making it run on Google's own hardware. I wouldn't see why. I mean, it's still like something handled by the cloud, which uses pretty much the same algorithm and more powerful hardware, but overall Magic Eraser is cool. Definitely like it. I would though say that Subject Lift is more useful for my everyday life and for the creation of my thumbnails than Magic Eraser would be. Also, I'm a real stickler for like natural looks, so I'm kind of really anxious about removing anything that was actually in an image, because I don't see the worth in an image if it's not really natural. I know most people will not agree with me in that regard. I hate the idea of like, oh, it recognized the Golden Gate Bridge, so here it fixes the Golden Gate Bridge details. I'm like, dude, why? Like, if I wanted to have a perfect image of the Golden Gate Bridge, I would probably, like, for one, I would probably do it myself with a really large camera, but most likely I can just download that shit from the internet. They're like, those like Leica 500 megapixel images out there. Like, believe me, you don't need to do that.
Magic Eraser, fix it in post. Oh, what's that? You have a photo where someone's moving a little too fast, or the hands were shaky and the face is kind of blurry. Well, there's a feature called Face Unblur. Literally fix it in post. And then even this new one called Best Take. People with kids are gonna love this one. Basically, you know how anytime you take a group photo where there's like 5 or 6 people in the photo, you just blast, you just take a bunch of pictures, and inevitably one person's face, they're either blinking or sneezing or something. It's never perfect. But this feature will let you go into that group shot, and this is for any group shot you've ever taken in your Google Photos library, by the way, not just shot on the Pixel. And it automatically recognizes the burst of photos and lets you pick the best face from...
I found out that this feature was available on the Nokia Lumia 1020, which is so fascinating to think. However, that being said, I think it's an impressive feature, and I wouldn't use it because of my preferences that I outlined, but I do believe that it's cool. So it's not like I'm complaining about more options. I know some people have said that they don't like feel comfortable with this level of AI being used to like transform images and stuff like that. To me, it doesn't really matter. I'll just put it at 1080p because I've seen some like hiccups in my stream.
From the whole burst on each person in the photo with surprisingly impressive accuracy. You will genuinely never have that one person with their eyes closed or looking the wrong way in a group photo ever again. I guess that makes your holiday cards that much easier. But also, even in videos, I've taken a lot of videos on the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro. There's a lot of processing happening. I do think Pixel video is improved over last year. It's less noisy in the shadows, and there's some nice shallow depth of field with quick autofocus. I shot almost the entire Corvette Z06 autofocus video on the Pixel 8 Pro. And I think it looks really good, but also in a lot of the shots of my face, there's this artificial brightening process.
It looks like he has bright eyeshadows, right? I don't know what it's called, that makeup, but yeah, there's a lot of artificial crap going on here. I can see some artifacts in his hair. It's like, oh my god, like I just prefer to have like a nice big sensor, decent optics. I know Google invests in that too, but there is too much reliance at this point for me. Like I have said before, that there's the reason why I almost exclusively put my iPhone into like Pro RAW capture, because that's where the good stuff comes out. Even though I don't edit most of my images afterwards, Pro RAW still like does great HDR and stuff. Like I don't capture in ProRes because it's a little too large even for a 1 terabyte device. I don't capture ProRes log because that requires too much editing. But then again, Apple's HDR 60 FPS videos are still pretty great. Definitely better than what I'm seeing here.
See it in my footage before I start talking. When it lands on my face, how it just brightens up.
Oh my god, oh wow, that's bad. Like this is by the way, this is the problem with like actually like relying too much on like specific algorithms of like, oh, I recognize the face, so now I do this, right? And actually Apple has gone through this. Anybody who remembers the iPhone XS, because the iPhone XS had like the A12 chip, which was more powerful thanks to being 7 nanometer. It had a much more powerful neural engine and stuff like that, a much better image signal processor on it. There was a lot that Apple was doing that was resulting in like over softening for like faces and selfies especially, and people were like, well, look, we know photos cannot be as natural as one might want it to be because we are still talking about relatively small sensors and stuff like that. Even like a lot of even the images cannot be too large, right? Most images that you take on the phone, most people want them to be around like 2, 3, maybe 5 megabytes at most. So there's a lot that has to happen here. But my god, like, this is way too aggressive. This is exactly what I don't want to happen.
My face, and adds this contrast. And just throughout the
really?
video,
Oh, that's
good amount.
Wait, yeah, that looks good. Why didn't
processed sharpening going on? Also, the audio eraser video feature is all right.
Yeah.
Again,
This is bullshit, by the way, that Google sometimes claims, which is, I fully believe them that they probably have a really good algorithm to recognize like audio layers and then like remove something specific. The problem with that is usually you need extremely high quality audio capture for something like that to work really well. Though you need to have a microphone that is like so good and so well balanced that it actually can record those layers in a somewhat distinct way, right? And then like you need the algorithm to recognize it. I fully believe that YouTube can do that, Google can do that, but it's a smartphone microphone. Smartphone microphones are not perfect by any means. They're just way too small for that physically. Like even you have to account for, you know how most microphones, the larger especially it gets, they're like really sensitive to like being, you know, tapped and being put in motion and stuff like that. You can probably hear my HVAC working right now. You know what? smartphones have to be built in a way that they aren't as influenced by that, because they are constantly mobile, because they are so small. So yes, it's just not going to be the same thing. We sometimes call that out from Apple when they call something, for example, like studio quality microphone or studio quality speakers, right? Apple is sometimes really focused on calling it quality, right? But it's like studio quality, but it's not actually studio tailored, right? Actually working in the studio requires much different parameters, not just reaching a high enough quality level, but also a certain reliability level, versatility level. And that's just what smartphones, just the way they're physically made, with the size they have to have, with the all amount of like background features they have to encompass, it just doesn't work.
Can only fix so much in post, but basically they show this feature where if you're taking videos and there's some background noise, you can go into the editor and separate out like the layers of different sounds. So there's this really cool UI that they've built in that is super impressive. You go into edit audio and audio eraser, it analyzes the video and then lets you drag up or down levels of different sounds it's identified. So nature and voices and background sounds and wind, depends on what video you took. It does okay with small stuff, but like, I don't know. It's super impressive at a low level, but then it can't really save the most disruptive wind around our studio or the exhaust sound of a 5.5 liter naturally aspirated V8. Like, it's not magic.
Think about this in the main channel in the Rimaps Navara video. That car is electric and basically has multiple personalities. And this one kind of does in the same way. You've probably heard the other cliche of...
I will say shout out to the colors, though.
Yeah, I guess it allows you to do in post what you can basically do on an iPhone with like the different microphone modes that like come up when you're doing like any kind of like audio tasks, like recording tasks, maybe like a FaceTime call or something. So it's cool that it has that. I don't like, it's basically like a feature that probably should be included in any kind of video editing software, and I guess they're using a little bit more AI to manage it, and this is why it's like currently Pixel exclusive, and they put like a lot of effort into like their AI algorithms and specifically with their tensor chips. But overall, it's not a killer feature by any means.
The color in Pixel video is really good. If you told me I could only take pictures by taking stills from video of any smartphone, I think I would pick the Pixel 8 Pro. Just the footage looks so good. Now, Google. Here's the thing about being
that means
so
nothing
good
to me.
at software visibly is it becomes way more obvious when you're suddenly not able to pull off a software trick on the non-Pro phone that you are able to pull off on the Pro phone, even though they're the same computer. Like, the good thing that you did was put the same exact Tensor G3.
The Tensor G3 on the regular Pixel 8 is like slightly lower clocked. I don't know if that applies to like the neural engine, their neural engine equivalent as well. I just call it the neural engine because it's a term I'm familiar with. So that's one difference that might work against it overall. Just wanted to mention it.
Same image signal processor, and the same primary camera, and the same selfie camera in the Pro and the non-Pro phones. So this sort of artificial separation between the Pro and the non-Pro with like software locking.
Apple does that too.
It was obvious when Apple did it, and it's even more obvious when Google does it. So if you open up the camera and switch over to Pro controls, that's only available on the Pro phone. Now that's funny. Of course, you can argue the non-Pro phone doesn't need Pro controls, but it's clearly capable of them, even if you bury them in settings. It's the same computer. They also both have a 50 megapixel sensor, but because it's locked under the Pro mode, you can only take 50 megapixel shots on the Pro phone. The non-Pro phone is always binning. Theoretically, that's going to be one of the things that you'll have to pay the $300 extra to get up to the Pro phone for, but also someone's already ported it to the Pixel 6. So, like, come on, Google, you ain't slick. There's even a blog post about some other features that are coming to the Pixel. They have this thing called Zoom Enhance. That's basically a generative fill version of Super Res Zoom. That's coming later this year, only to Pixel 8 Pro for some reason. and a specially improved Magic Eraser version that uses generative fill.
Yeah, by the way, like we have like stuff that will be coming later to the iPhone, right? That includes general iOS 17 features like of course like the journal and it includes stuff that is specific to even a specific model, something like spatial video, which will be coming to the Pro iPhones. But like this is really, really weird, especially since so much of this stuff is like also has equivalents in like their cloud. So I really don't know what they're trying to sell consumers about, like what's so different here, what's so unjustifiable about like making it work about like on a regular Pixel 8. So I guess that's like where, like, look, I have criticized Apple. I think ProRes, ProRAW should all be on the non-Pro iPhones that at least have like the A15 chip. Certainly anything that has the A16 chip with 6 gigs of RAM, because the iPhone 13 Pro has a lot of those features, and it has an A15 with 5 GPU cores and 6 gigs of RAM. Well, and not even the fastest memory, it's not the fastest memory anymore, but it's at least the fastest memory in an iPhone that is like shared between the A16 and the A17. But like there's no reason for why the regular iPhone 15 should not have ProRAW, ProRes, or even why the iPhone 14 Pro shouldn't get like backported the 24 megapixel mode that the iPhone 15 has. Now it's important to consider there are some limitations for the iPhone 14 Pro here, which mainly come down to the fact that the iPhone 15 is not actually that good with its 24 megapixel mode as the iPhone 15 Pro is. Some of that might come down to the larger sensor in the 15 Pros, but part of it really seems to come down to the much better image signal processor in the A17 Pro chip. Now, with the Pixels, like, come on, just do it. You're making it AI based anyway. Like, say that's like, oh, it runs on device only on the Pixel 8 Pro, but for everything else, for every other Pixel, it's like using the cloud. So like you can do stuff that even Apple cannot do, and you also have a different clientele than Apple's to a large degree.
And only the 8 Pro.
It's ridiculous. It's obvious what's being done out here. It's on a nightly basis. I hope the world can see now what's really going on.
I love this clip.
It's getting ridiculous. It's really ridiculous.
Okay,
it's ridiculous.
Magic Editor is
awesome.
It's wild. It's one of the wildest things they've ever made. It is available on both phones, and it definitely goes beyond fixing it in post. So you open up a photo, you hit edit, and then at the bottom left corner there's this wonderful colorful rainbow magic editor button just tempting you to press it. From here, the editor UI is basically saying, all right, go ahead and select something with your hands, and then we can change it. We can do whatever you want to it. Select an object and you can remove it, move it around, resize it. Select a person, we can move them up or down, or hit the bottom middle button to switch the whole scene to golden hour or replace the entire sky in your photo. And then once you submit the edit, it takes a few seconds to process, and then kind of like DALL-E, it gives you 4 options of this edit to pick whichever version is the most convincing. They're not, professional photographer level edits.
Yeah.
I mean, you can zoom in and pixel peep and find some edges sometimes that look weird here or there. I also did try the exact same generative fill example that they showed in their commercials of this kid on a park bench where it oppressively fills in the missing balloons. When I do it, it kind of tries to do that, but definitely doesn't do it.
For one, the UI actually tells me a lot about this feature that actually disappoints me a little. It seems to be really, really generative AI based, right? I know that, of course, it would be generative AI based, but it looks far more generalized, almost like it's working like a DALL-E with prompts, right? It does not feel like it's actually based on any deep understanding of like photography and the art of taking photos. It just looks like it's trying to do extra shit in an image. And of course, shadows will not be perfect as a result. Reflections will not be perfect as a result. it's really a gimmick feature. It's cool for something that really does not need to be super artsy. For example, I would like to use something like this with still a regular UI, not something that I have to like talk to Dolly about for like my thumbnails. I think that could be cool, right? It's still based on my image, so I hope that it would like have no real like copyright infringement issues or any other problems, but it really is not like an improvement of your regular images. It's just a fun thing you can do with your regular images. If anybody thinks that Magic Editor is like a fundamental improvement for your features, I think that those people will be disappointed. And I'm kind of a little bit.
It nearly as well. But the truth is, zoomed all the way out, these are decently convincing edits to regular people. And you can just do it with any photo in your library. So it really just feels like, without knowing how to use Photoshop or any of these image generation AI tools, the Pixel Magic Editor, basically what it did is just, it lowered the barrier to entry to just lie, I guess. Now, every once in a while, I did get a pop-up box over my edit attempt that said, it's unable to show results because it might violate our Gen AI.
Ah, interesting.
But I was never able to find like exactly why or any trend in this.
Oh my god! Guys, do you have the same idea? Can it like? Not that I need it, right? I guess every guy says that, but I wonder how their algorithm would work if, like, you know, you ask them to like, you take a picture of a sausage and maybe you want a larger sausage, right? Something like that. Could that be cool with it? I mean, this is also the difference between like, like it's supposed to be like running with like on-device shit. So why wouldn't it be able to? It's my own image.
It seemed to come up more often when I tried to edit a picture of a person, but then it would totally let me just select a watermark in a photo and effortlessly delete that, which is probably going to be a concern for some photographers. So yeah, I would just say that I'm probably going to end up making an entire separate video just about this tool because it's fascinating and what it brings into the world is wild. But I don't know. What is a photo? But you know what you can't fix in post though? Battery life.
Yep.
You can't AI your way out of a huge 2400 nit screen burning through battery. You're just going to need the hardware. You're going to need a big battery. You're going to need an efficient chip for this one. And I'm happy to report that I have had really good battery life.
Really?
And this is especially on the 8 Pro. So
Okay.
I've gotten 6 to 8 hours of screen on time regularly. Standby time has been decent. My only real question at this point is, and I only ask this because of the history we've seen with the Pixel, how long will the battery life be?
Not long. I'm sorry. Pixels tend to like create garbage or like collect garbage, I guess. It's like they will get worse. 6 to 8 hours is already not that great by flagship standards. I know iPhones sometimes won't hit that as well while at launch, but iPhones and Samsungs are actually known to get better over time. I know some people have not been happy with the 14 battery life. I'm sorry that always on display is something that you keep enabled even though you shouldn't if you actually want maximum battery life. I'm sorry that you never go into settings and actually disable background app refresh for notoriously bad actors like your Instagrams and stuff like that, even though people should know by now that those apps are terrible at managing battery life, or Facebook for that matter, or anything from Facebook/Meta for that matter. So no, I never had problems with battery life, even on my 13 Pro Max after like 15% of battery degradation, and I never was nice to it. I just was relatively smart with it.
Be this good because, you know, it could be great for a few months and then start to fade like previous Pixels, or maybe it'll be great for years, the whole time you own the phone. Only time will tell. At the end of the day, though, the Pixel is still great at what it's always been great at, which is being smart. Like, there's so many features, from call screening to Google Assistant everywhere, Google stock apps getting so good, and the more I use the Pixel as my daily phone, as I have for so long, the more I just kind of get used to this stuff, and the harder it is to live without it on another phone. Android 14 has already breathed life into older Pixels already. Literally, my biggest primary bug is clicking Twitter notifications for some reason just take an extra beat and a half to open. Kind of weird. One of the new features on this one is when you're in any web page in Chrome, you can pull up Google Assistant and just ask it for a summary of the entire web page you're reading. And Google Assistant, with its new AI features, reads your screen and generates a summary of 3 or 4 bullet points that are typically pretty good. Now, I went and tried this with a few other apps, but I basically always got an error saying this app doesn't support summaries, so it looks like the app developers are going to have to opt in to have their apps scraped by the summaries, which I kind of suspect a lot of them are not going to do that. Even Google's own news app doesn't support it. So this basically is just a
I have to bring this up. Like, come on. Like, this is where it's really Google, right? I know that, like, people even complain that, like, the YouTube Studio app is, like, not really up to par on Android. It's like you bring out this feature, it does for some reason not work with your news app. I really don't want to be nitpicky, but you're now charging $1,000 for your Pro phone, right? They're real for 128 gigabytes nonetheless, right? There needs to be some kind of answer from you when it comes to, well, we are the smartest phone. Maybe that's true, right? I personally don't care about most of the smarts that Google is offering, but I cannot deny their existence and I cannot deny their general usability for a wider audience. I'm not a fucking asshole. However, if it's not comprehensive, if it's sometimes like what we saw with Magic Editor, if it then takes up seconds and then it will not be reliable, right? At least with something like Subject Lift with iOS, if it doesn't work, I know that it doesn't work, right? I tap on the subject that I want to lift out and I see the area that will be cut out that I can copy and paste, right? And then I work with somewhat more professional apps afterwards to actually do more editing, right? Something like Pixelmator, for example, that's where I create most of my thumbnails. So my question is, like, if Google cannot give us really a fully comprehensive solution where most issues get like addressed really well, like they've had like foldable devices, like not Google themselves, but like major Android manufacturers had like foldable devices, and it took them until like this or last year to finally implement decent features that are foldable focused, right? This is now their own phone, well, now because they actually did it, because they now have their own foldable, but like, look, with this, right now they have their own AI shit, and even with their own apps they cannot fully integrate it. I feel like there's so many like scattershot like individual teams at Google working on all kinds of AI stuff that there is really like, yes, I understand in comparison to something like Siri, of course, that frees them up to do a lot of very creative shit, very unique stuff. But then there is like no cohesion there in the end. And this is where I will always prefer iPhone as long as I can see this from Google.
And then after the
and Samsung pretty much does nothing, right? Like, I mean, I could make the case like, oh, Samsung has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Like, is there really no way for most of those features to just be ported? I've actually said that, I think on Twitter, where I've said that I don't think Pixel or Google-made hardware should exist at all, at least not in the premium segment. I think Google hardware should either exist as like a mid-range device, right, to make sure that there's always a good like high value alternative to iPhones, because iPhones are expensive, and if Google can come in with like a $500 device that has like a decent camera, good battery life, and good performance at that price point, while Apple's only real alternative at that price point is the iPhone SE with like an ancient design, an outdated LCD display, and a singular one back camera that doesn't even have night mode. This is where I think Google hardware should be. But if you want Google hardware, if you want really like expensive great Google software, then my alternative suggestion is for Google to work with Android OEMs and to have something called, what I would call at least, Android Pro. It would be like a license that would give Android manufacturers that obviously get Android itself for free, basically. Obviously that pays for Google, because then people still buy stuff in the Google Play Store and shit like that. But with this, they would pay a licensing fee. Google would come in, help them with some specific stuff, right? Optimizing for their camera hardware, their algorithms, right? Making sure that maybe the drivers are longer supported. Maybe they create a direct link to like Qualcomm and help them with drivers, and maybe devices that are known to have Android Pro then also come like with a promise of longer support, because beyond just a processor driver, you obviously need to have like resources invested into software testing for a specific product. So if like maybe like the S23 Ultra could have like One UI 6 with Android 14 Pro at that point, that could still, even if the other hardware like from the S23 and S23 Plus is like still good value because it's cheaper as well, you would still have the argument like, well, but this is Android Pro, right? It gets more direct love from Google. And I think this would be a far better thing for the overall industry than Google making their own hardware, hoarding their own individual features, putting way more resources now into making sure that Pixels have great longevity instead of helping actual OEMs with device longevity, optimizing their AI stuff for their specific processor and not the actual mainstream processor that most Android flagships will get. I think the presence of Google Pixel makes the industry worse, while I think the presence of specific Google AI based features makes the industry overall better. And I think there is a good solution here to be had, where Google actually becomes stronger versus Apple. It's their egomania, where they believe that they can take on Apple directly instead of with the help of their partners, that led them to create Pixel as we know it now. I don't like it, because I think these devices are still compromised in several ways that many Android flagships are not. Let's see what happens starting in like 2025, once they have like their own next generation design Tensor G3, G5 at that point, that will be manufactured on TSMC 3 nanometer. But until then, Pixels will not be for me, unfortunately.
It gives you a few cards to ask follow-up questions about the subject and just keep Googling more stuff. But then just, this phone gets a lot of the little stuff right too. Just the little things that make it feel like a flagship. The haptics are excellent. Like, it's got some of the highest quality phone calls I've ever heard on a phone, stuff like that. Overall, when you put fit and finish and hardware up alongside software experience, and I think these new screens especially, it feels like this is finally the generation of Pixel that is right alongside the other flagships of the smartphone world. And it gets supported like a flagship too. 7 years of software updates, 7 years of feature drop updates, 7 years of security updates, 7 years of spare parts available, and it'll do so for the new starting price of $700. And I think it's worth it. I think this is
I think the Pixel 8 is probably worth it, yes. I think there's probably nothing quite like it in the $700 space. I mean, Apple does not even have a current gen device in the $700 space. You would have to go with like last year's iPhone 14. So yeah, I actually think that the Pixel 8 is pretty good. I think the Pixel 8 Pro is somewhat questionable in its value, but Google is pretty aggressive often in giving like discounts and like bundles with like their Pixel Watch and stuff like that.
The new price tag, I think everything they've done from the 120 hertz and the brighter screen across the board, this is a phone that I would have no problem recommending. Now, is the $300 extra for the Pro worth it? That one's going to be tough. And again, it's because Google did such a good job with feature parity, same chip, same primary camera between these. So it's going to come down to the couple of small differences between them. Do you want that telephoto camera and the bigger screen, bigger battery, bigger phone, the temperature sensor? I don't know. This is harder to recommend.
Yeah, I guess I am surprised a little by his stance on like the battery life. I'll just briefly check what like The Verge has to say. I know that they've had like a Pixel review. Let us start with the Pixel Watch 2, right? A 7. Battery actually lasts all day. My god, much faster charging, more cohesive Fitbit integration, better health and stress tracking. Still comes in only one side. Recycled aluminum isn't better than stainless steel. Yeah, definitely not. A safety signal requires LTE model and Fitbit Premium. Oh yeah, you have to, like, we wrecked another Pixel Watch screen this year without trying. Oh really? I guess it has to do with like this kind of construction. Again, I'm not too interested in the Pixel Watch. Let us just go into the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro here. I'll just make my face a little larger again. So, are better phones to their processor, but they also come with a price hike. They give the Pixel 8 Pro an 8. I believe the iPhone 15 Pro also got an 8. Handy manual camera control, 7 years of AI upgrade, useful if troubling AI photo editing tools. I don't care about the troubling part. Face unlock now works for payments. Okay, apparently you're too lazy to put your finger onto a device that you already hold in your hand, whatever. The bad gimmicky temperature sensor. Tensor G3 still runs hot occasionally. And then on the regular Pixel 8, they gave it a 7. Misses out on some pro-only features. Okay, do they cover... okay. Both phones offer a top refresh rate of 180 Hz, but one is LTPO, so offers 1 Hz. It's all pretty logical for the most part. Are there like... okay, there's better punctuation or whatever. It's all really not that interesting to me. Why would you even make like a review for both phones in like one article? That just feels strangely ambitious and lazy at the same time. With good lighting and clearance, it's creepily good. You can sometimes tell that something isn't quite right. This is like face unblur, I guess. And this is, oh, this is best take. Yeah, okay. I guess she always made the same face. Okay, you can move, like, this is magic editor stuff, okay. The edited clip sounds almost like I'm taking a scroll down a perfectly quiet street. So this is audio eraser. Can you trust Google to make your investment worthwhile? Jesus Christ, this is like no subheadings or anything. Who structures it? You know what? I'm so angry with the structure that I'm just going to go to Engadget. Do they have like, yeah, Google's most compelling phones in years, thanks to the Tensor. Wow, they gave it a 90 and a 93. So the 93, I believe, is the same rating as they gave to the iPhone, and it has much improved battery life, and configs go up to 1 terabyte of storage. Is that true? I thought that it went up to 512. Yeah. Wait. What? Where's the 1 terabyte? Is there like a special option? Okay. Battery life is apparently improved. Did they make benchmarks? No. Okay, you know what, there's like not enough like here. I have to read this through, otherwise it will become like really unstructured. Oh my god, like, look, how should I read this shit, right? It's like, as for the screens themselves, Google is using Actua and Super Actua branding to describe the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro displays, and I kind of hate it. And then look where we are here. Don't get me wrong, they look great, and with peak brightness of 2000 or 2400 nits depending on the model, they're even better looking and more viable outdoors than before. My issue is that I don't want to live in a world where every component on a device needs to have a catchy name with nebulous definitions. We have Retina displays on iPhones, Pixel Sense screens on Surfaces, and now actual panels on Pixels. It's too much. You know what? This is exactly what prevents me from reading your fucking article. Limited storage options on the Pixel 8. Wait, does the Pixel support like an SD card? The Pixel 8 Pro has also gotten a big boost in the storage department with support of up to 1 terabyte. Wait, where is this listed? Where does it say that? Maybe it's in the US only? Of course, horsepower, again, they have nothing here, like nothing. They mention like performance, don't provide a single benchmark. What about, like, is there like a good comparison to the iPhone? So it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, so I think I'll do like some coverage on those phones when I actually have the time to read up on them a little more. I actually enjoy this stream a lot. I do like that it won't be too long. Yeah, thank you anyone who joined. Thank you anyone who obviously dealt with me changing topics without announcing it prior to the stream. Thank you all so much again for the incredible support for this channel. We have had some amazing growth. We are approaching 6,900 yeah, is it? Yeah, it's 6,900 subscribers. So we're probably gonna hit that tomorrow. So thank you so much. I catch you in the next one. I'll definitely provide more coverage than this on the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro. This is Marc Tech tuning out.